You may have noticed that in so many ways, the world in which we live seems to be in upheaval. So many things seem to be different, coming apart, being challenged, and in a lot of ways, for a lot of people, it feels as if the world is falling apart. But have you also noticed how many Christians there are in this world? And so, if there are so many of us, why is the world seeming to be in such a bad state? If you listen to Ezekiel this morning in our first reading, Ezekiel would very, very strongly be saying, by implication, that the reason the world is in the state it's in is because in some very real way we have fallen short in our responsibility. The world is as it is because we have not answered the call given to us by the Lord to be that agent for goodness and holiness and reconciliation and justice in this world. Listen again to what Ezekiel is trying to say. God warns Ezekiel, if I challenge the wicked in this world and you on my behalf do not speak up and warn them, if you remain quiet, if you keep it to yourself, if you do nothing and just go about your everyday comfortable life and don't warn the wicked, I hold you responsible for them. There's an old question that comes from Genesis chapter 3, am I my brother's keeper? And the answer is yes. Now, before we jump to conclusions about what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it, let me clarify something. If you read the book of Ezekiel, one of my favorite books of the prophets, Ezekiel is not talking about that person you know from class who's kind of living that lifestyle that they really probably, kind of sort of shouldn't be living. You know what I'm talking about? That person we all know, someone like that? That's not the wickedness that Ezekiel's talking about. You know that member of your family, maybe a cousin, maybe a crazy uncle or something, who's kind of living that lifestyle that they really shouldn't be living and doing things that we all kind of know are not a great way to live? You know what I'm talking about? Yes? No? Okay. That's not the wickedness that Ezekiel's talking about. The wicked that God is challenging Ezekiel to speak up against is the wickedness of the rich and the powerful in our world. The ones who, by their wickedness, the poor and those who suffer injustice are oppressed. The leaders of our world, the corruption, the guilt, the wickedness of those who are responsible for the brokenness of the world, the powerful and the wealthy. These are the wicked ones that Ezekiel is challenged by God and then challenges us to speak up against. These are the ones that we are held responsible for if we do nothing. Now notice what was said. If we do something, if we speak up and we challenge them, then we're not held responsible. But if we simply step back and say, really not my problem, not my business, I'll just stay out of it, then we're somehow responsible for doing nothing. Now in the gospel, I think we take it even a step further. Because while we're challenged in the first reading to speak out against the wickedness that is the problem and the root of our world, the wickedness of the strong and the wealthy and the powerful, now we're also challenged to do something about those instances where we have been offended, where we have been sinned against. All too often in our world, I think Christians sometimes think that forgiveness means forget and let it go. That's not forgiveness, that is avoidance. Forgiveness is this active act of courage, this incredible vulnerability where we step forward and we say to someone who has sinned against us, we say to them, here is how I'm wounded, here is how I've been broken or hurt, and it's an act of incredible vulnerability. And the motivation for this is what we heard in the first reading, love. Because we desire more than anything else reconciliation, not retribution. We desire for harmony and for that relationship to be put right. That's why we step forward. That's why we get out of our comfort zone, if you will, and say to somebody, I have been hurt and I long to be reconciled with you. And all too often, as I said, we tend to think of forgiveness as this type of forgive and forget, or let go, or ignore the pain and just move on, water under the bridge. That's not forgiveness. At the very heart of forgiveness is the idea of a radical transformation of the self. The moment where we let go of our experience of hurt, of woundedness, of pain, because we've been sinned against, and we try to embrace an understanding of the brokenness, the woundedness, the confusion, and the mess in the life of the person who wounded us, who sinned against us, the moment we can look at the situation from their vantage point, understand that they were probably acting out of a place of brokenness, woundedness, and mess, that their life is wounded too, and that was the reason that they did what they did, the moment we can enter into their experience and understand it, the moment we let go of our own pain and enter into the pain of the other, as brutally difficult as that is the heart of forgiveness. The moment we enter into an understanding of the other, even when that other person has wounded us, that is when real forgiveness is possible. Last week in the gospel, we heard Jesus say, if you try to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you give your life away for my sake, you shall save it. This is the most appropriate description for how brutally difficult real forgiveness is. It's nothing less than giving your life away. It's nothing less than embracing one of the most difficult and counterintuitive actions that we can do as Christians, and that is entering into the mess of the other, even when the other was the one who hurt us. This is how we as Christians propose to help get involved in a world that's broken. It's not good enough for us to simply sit back and say, well, I'm just going to do this, I'm going to say my prayers, follow the rules so that I can get out of the world and go to heaven. No, the challenge that we are given as disciples of Jesus, especially even going way back before the Lord, is this challenge that we as followers of our God have to get into the world to help be those who solve the problems, fix the brokenness, be agents for justice and goodness and holiness. And the two ways to do it, confronting the wickedness and forgiving those who have sinned against us. This is the fulfillment of the law. This is the fulfillment of our vocation. This is what everything is all about. This is how we fix this world. And I propose to you, if the hundreds of millions of Christians that are in this world, in this country, the billions that are in our world, if we were more serious about doing this, I think our world would actually be a much better place. This is what it really means to love your neighbor as yourself.